Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Lexi Gertelfeld. I'm the Director of California Outdoor Recreation Partnership. Thank you for joining us for our special webinar presentation today. We're very excited because it's an issue that we're very passionate about, creating an Office of Outdoor Recreation in every state, but particularly California eventually. Our webinar is called How to Create, Implement, and Grow an Office of Outdoor Recreation, and we have special guest Jason Curry from the Utah Division of Outdoor Recreation. As background, Utah was the first state to create an Office of Outdoor Recreation, so we have a lot to learn from Jason and the team out in Utah. For those that are new to Corp, we're a 501c6 nonprofit organization that represents the outdoor industry. Our mission is to power a voice for the outdoor recreation industry to shape policy, support investments, and engage an inclusive community of outdoor participants in California around the benefits of outdoor recreation. We are the State Outdoor Business Alliance in California, and I describe our functioning as kind of an outdoor chamber of commerce because we've got members ranging from nonprofit organizations to guide services, manufacturers, suppliers, retailers, education nonprofits throughout the state. I like outdoor outreach. I see you on here. And why do we exist? Well, California is home to the nation's largest outdoor industry economy, contributing $81.5 billion spending annually and 545,000 direct jobs. And without further ado, I'll introduce Jason Curry. Jason Curry is the Director of Utah Division of Outdoor Recreation. Do you call it DOR?
We call it DOR a lot, yeah.
DOR. Okay. It's for DOR. Uh, Jason was appointed director of DOR in December 2022. Prior to DOR, Curry served as deputy director of the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, overseeing 6 state area offices, the division's law enforcement program, public affairs, and its safety program. Before being promoted to deputy director, he was the division's public information officer and chief investigator. And you also served many years on the Davis County Search and Rescue Team, and you started your career with the DNR in 1999 as a public affairs coordinator. So you have a big background in government in Utah, which I think is very important for your role in understanding how the functionality works. And it says that you also graduated from the University of Utah with a bachelor's degree in economics. You reside in Bountiful, Utah with your wife and 2 children. And Jason enjoys mountain biking, skiing, OHV, and snowmobile riding, rock climbing, camping, sailing, and just about any other form of outdoor recreation, which I think the enthusiasm shows and how you've been directing the office over there.
All right, if you say so.
It's awesome to see.
Friday, man, I'm gonna let the chips drive the train.
Sorry, I'm going to mute some participants. There we go. Yeah, so I think it's awesome that you're living the passion of your work as an outdoorsman yourself. So I'll let you turn it over of why that you're passionate about this work, but also the background on the Utah Division of Outdoor Recreation and how it has progressed over the years since it was created in 2012, I believe, right, Jason?
Yeah, 2013. 2012 was when the process began, but in 2013 was the creation of the office. And thank you, Lexi. Thanks for the opportunity to share what we've experienced over the last 13 years as we've started out small and now become a fairly large government organization. And I always like to say, as far as outdoor experiences in Utah, and you read that list. I love all of those things. I went on a nice 9-mile hike yesterday, right in my backyard. So I love Utah. Been to California a lot too. I like to say anything you can do in California, you can do in Utah, even surfing, but we have to kind of fake it. And like you said, I'm really surprised California doesn't already have this with it being the economic powerhouse that it is. And honestly too, from a policy perspective, what California does nationally in all sorts of different policy conversations, but especially around outdoor recreation, there's a lot, I think, on the horizon as this effort gets momentum and as you guys become successful in what you're aiming for. So I hope that as I share kind of our history, and that's kind of what I'm going to do is provide a little bit of a history and the evolution of how the division came to be what it is today, starting out small, took different steps along the way, and all of the different states around the country that do have some form of division or office of outdoor rec, they've all done it just a little bit differently. And so with that, I'll kind of jump in. We're currently the one of 10 different entities within our Department of Natural Resources. And as far as the mission of the organization, which I think is important to share on the front end, to ensure all Utahns can live a healthy and active lifestyle through outdoor recreation. Pretty simple, but a lot of different things that we do. And as far as our history, though, it was in 2012 when this conversation really got started. Big talking points were that not only is Utah the fastest growing state, but our outdoor recreation realm was growing a lot too. We had, the Olympics were just 10 years ago. We'd been seeing astronomical growth and demand for outdoor recreation experiences in Utah from international travelers and even people that were traveling and moving here. And at that time, and these numbers are going to be more relevant when I get to the end, but try to remember our GDP input at that time was $4 billion from outdoor recreation in 2012. There were 65,000 jobs, and we had $300 million in tax revenue, which at that time was significant. Not as big as some of our other sectors in terms of tech and other business and aerospace, but a pretty big deal, and not looking to diminish anytime soon. But as you can see the picture there, this is from the Outdoor Retailer Show during the heyday. That's when this conversation really kicked off. There were some nationally political sensitive issues, including national monuments, the Bears Ears National Monument, some of the efforts on one side or the other of the national monument conversation really got this started. And the Governor Herbert at the time knew, as this picture shows, I mean, that hall, that convention center was just absolutely packed. And so all of those people attending this event and representing retailers and buyers and manufacturers and advocates and everybody else in the outdoor recreation community demanded that Utah recognize it. And it's not that we didn't. I think it was recognized, but we wanted to prove it. We wanted to show it. So Governor Herbert committed to a strategic plan at that time for outdoor recreation in Utah that would really address concerns and also help us to know where to go from here in terms of the growth in our population, growth in demand for outdoor recreation. So 2013 was the following year, and the outcome of that mandate from Governor Herbert was that we form a outdoor recreation office within the Governor's Office of Economic Development, which included at that time one director, one support staff, and we were to incorporate recreation into our regional planning efforts. We would hold an outdoor recreation summit in the state, and that we would also continue to support outdoor industries throughout Utah. And so that was our landmark year, 2013, when everything really kicked off. The office was formed. We had one person and a car and one support staff and computers, and I say we. I have been in my position now for 3 years. Here in just a couple of weeks, I'll hit my anniversary. But this is some effort that I followed all along. It's a dream job for me today, and it was even in 2013 when I heard the creation of this position and this effort. But in 2013 was when it all kicked off, and things were good. It was a lot of effort in driving outdoor recreation, the outdoor recreation economy in Utah, and trying to figure out where we needed to be. And so in 2015 was when we decided as a state that it would be important for us to put some financial support into outdoor recreation. Many states were already doing some form of outdoor recreation grant. And so at that time, the Industrial Assistance Account, which was an account within our Utah Office of Tourism, we got $500,000. Huge chunk of money at that time for outdoor recreation infrastructure, trails, and really sort of those small scale recreation projects that we knew a lot of communities were needing and wanting. And it was lots and lots of applications, very difficult process to really try to figure out how to allocate $500,000 among millions of dollars of requests. And so very successful, not hard to predict that because of the need that was out there. All over Utah, there's opportunities for outdoor recreation and therefore an opportunity to have that infrastructure grow. We had our first outdoor recreation summit in 2014. Tons of participation, primarily from outdoor business and outdoor commercial entities, but also a lot of advocacy groups and a lot of trail organizations, a lot of adaptive users, and a lot of underserved communities that really wanted to collaborate together, network, hear some content, and that summit, as it began in 2014, in the first year, took off just and was incredibly popular. Has been since then. We're now we just finished up with our 12th or our 11th one, actually, planning for our 12th. And then in 2018, and in this time, we're still talking about just a couple people, the director and one administrative staff. The state legislature decided at that time it was time to invest some more into outdoor recreation infrastructure and expand our grant program and create a new funding source. So they implemented a small transient room tax, so basically a hotel tax of 0.32%, which at that time, where spending levels were and projections, it looked like we were going to get almost $5 million. So 10x'd the amount of outdoor recreation grant funding available, which meant obviously more trail projects, more improvements within the state parks, more true infrastructure projects that are not super exciting, but absolutely necessary in terms of the restrooms, parking lots, trailheads, signage, and all those things that really help keep an outdoor recreation experience sustainable and scalable. Skate parks and climbing walls and other sort of marginal projects started to creep in, and so it got really exciting for a few years where we were able to fund a lot of cool projects that moved outdoor recreation forward in Utah and got more young people especially involved in being outside. Great timing because we were only now in 2018 just a couple of years away from the pandemic and looking in retrospect. And then in 2018, kind of this groundswell year where Utah and Colorado and 6 other states all had created these offices, and most of them were in the governor's office. Most of them were appointees, just like ours was at that time. Utah, Colorado, Montana, Wyoming, Vermont, North Carolina, Washington, and Oregon. We all got together and decided to form an organization. And then we formed an organization called the Confluence of States. I'm sure your past guests have talked about the Confluence and the value and a little bit of the history there. But you can see the original founders, kind of chartering members of the Confluence at that time, those original 8 states. And now we're just getting ready to add on our 25th and probably 26th member states to the Confluence. So it's grown, and like I said, each one of these states does things just a little bit differently, but overall we work together to build consensus and provide policy direction to folks like Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, as you heard from Chris last episode, and great organization, great leadership nationally, and we collaborate really closely with ORR. After 2018, between 2018 and 2020, we knew that you can allocate money and you can appropriate money, but it takes money to spend money. So we had an addition of a couple of staff to administer the grants, as well as carry out a relatively new program at that time, Every Kid Outdoors, aimed at increasing participation from young people in the outdoors. Created a small segment of our grant that was aimed at outdoor recreation education experiences, guided experiences from everything from skiing and hiking, rock climbing, rafting, everything for young people. And Utah, like California and other states, has a lot of opportunity for that, a lot of nonprofits that offer those experiences. And so that one, along with the Utah Trails Forum, was also in this era. And the Utah Trails Forum was, at that time, we knew there were a lot of trail organizations in the state. There was a huge need for some organization. The Outdoor Learning Network within the National Governors Association, as well as the formation in 2020 of the Utah Outdoor Adventure Commission. So a commission that was aimed at our spending, our priorities, our planning efforts in the state. And that was a legislatively codified group. We now have a commission. And so the next step was, like I said, codifying a division of outdoor recreation. We had been in the governor's office, and then in 2021, the legislature made the decision that this outfit, along with its collection of programs, the grants, the Every Kid Outdoors, our industry support, our summit, would move into the Department of Natural Resources and become a division within DNR, which that was the turning point where, if it's a governor appointed program, a governor appointed office, those things can change fairly quickly with changes in administration. And this was under Governor Cox, who's our current governor, after Herbert, and the legislature decided this was the right move. And so we now became more official, harder to get rid of. And so it was in 2021 that we kind of combined and joined with our sister agency within the Department of Natural Resources, the Division of State Parks. And as that effort to kind of combine within DNR and blend with the Division of State Parks, it was recognized pretty quickly that the Division of State Parks had been administering several programs that had statewide significance. And that included our state boating program. Even though most of our boating here in Utah takes place within state parks, our OHV program, on the other hand, most of the off-highway vehicle activities take place on BLM lands, Forest Service lands. So it started this list of the programs and responsibilities that State Parks Division was taking care of, and they were called the Division of State Parks and Recreation. Our OHV grant, recreational law enforcement, the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant, along with the SCORP, their statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan was in state parks, recreational trails program grant, and then their trails program overall for trail maintenance and coordination of volunteers when it comes to trails. So that list was arrived at over the process of a few months. And again, our state legislature looked at all of those programs within state parks that had more statewide significance, certainly a role to play within the state parks, but beyond that as well, and decided that the next step after forming this division of outdoor recreation, the next step would be to add those state park and recreation programs into the division as well. And so they changed the name of State Parks and Recreation to State Parks and kept us the Division of Outdoor Recreation. And we grew considerably with that. We took on several staff members with regard to the OHV program, boating program, our grant, law enforcement even. We took on 7 rangers and the trails program. So the other thing that happened in 2019 as this was taking place, right before this joining of the 2 divisions, was this Utah Trails Forum idea. And as I mentioned, the world of trail advocacy, volunteering, and trail building, there are 10 to 20 trail nonprofits throughout the state who work on different regional projects and long range trails and things like that. And they were all saying different things and planning different things. And we decided it was time to bring some consensus among all of those trail nonprofits, but also the other participants. And as we formed this Utah Trails Forum and the resulting conference that came out of that, we realized there's also higher ed, local government, our federal partners that have a lot of trail planners and rec staff, as well as commercial vendors were interested in getting together. And so we began to hold an annual trails conference. And all of these entities were able to network and talk about best practices and hear from experts and hear from success stories from throughout the whole Intermountain West. And in fact, as I'll show later, the effort to convene all these trail experts grew beyond Utah's borders as well. And then in 2022, another big landmark year, right after the division was created and combined with some of those elements from State Parks and Rec, the legislature decided to create a commission for outdoor recreation. They called it the Outdoor Adventure Commission, made up of about 15 people, and some of them were local electeds. Our chair in the picture there, Representative Jeff Stenquist, was the chair, and one of our state representatives, as well as a lot of other stakeholders that from various groups to form this commission and deliver a statewide strategic plan for outdoor recreation. And that was the job that they were tasked with at that time. So they took some time and worked with one of our universities here in the state to create a fairly comprehensive, even though it's different from our SCORP, fairly comprehensive statewide plan for outdoor recreation. And it took into account all different aspects of outdoor recreation, from the economy to planning efforts and the need for programming and efforts to remove barriers and help audiences and prospective outdoor recreators get better access. These are the outcomes of that strategic plan. These are what were called the cardinal directions for the plan: to build and support collaborative processes, to improve awareness education about safe and responsible recreation, increase access to outdoor recreation while protecting natural and scenic landscapes, as well as increase the economic and social benefits that are generated from outdoor recreation. And so those have kind of been our guiding stars, cardinal directions, the pillars of the plan, whatever you want to call it. And so this plan at that time was rolled out, and it was also decided right about the same time that there needed to be some funding behind this. But as I said, funding takes funding, and it takes people. So little snapshot on where we have arrived at here in the 2023 and 2024 timeframe. This is about the time I came on board, but we had additional staff from state parks, and we also, at that point, as we had become a division, we realized we no longer have any financial or communications or administrative support from the governor's office, where the office had been located. We needed a lot of help and a lot of work to be done on contracts and compliance with so many grants, as well as recreation planning, and to be able to not only plan our own efforts, but provide some technical assistance to communities around the state that are looking for that expertise, and they just don't have it. So a lot of growth in 23 and 24. At this time, we probably had about 28 people total, and then we took on 7 rangers, and that took us to about 36 people total. As I mentioned, that Outdoor Adventure Commission, they were formed to oversee and help create that outdoor recreation strategic plan. That statewide plan for outdoor recreation indicated that there was a great need for infrastructure and a great need for additional opportunities and expansion. As Utah continued to be the fastest growing state in the nation, the demand for outdoor recreation continued to grow as well. And just prior to this, there was a study by the University of Utah, Kempsey Gardner Institute for Policy, that found that there was a variety of different reasons why people move to Utah. There's a variety of different reasons why they relocate their business here, or why they choose to stay here. And the number one reason by far that people cited in that survey was access to outdoor recreation opportunities. And so at that time, they decided that the Outdoor Adventure Commission, while it had done some really good things in terms of overseeing this plan, they extended the sunset and made them a permanent group. And the main job that they had to do at that point was to oversee the expenditures and the prioritization of a new funding source that also came out in 2023, which was this 1% designation of all statewide sales tax, which at that time our state sales tax was about $42 billion. And so what that translated to for us overall was about 42 million. And so the breakout within statute for all these different projects, including infrastructure, obviously building things, primarily things that don't fit the category of one of our grants. So a lot of planning stuff and a lot of land acquisition, as well as just projects that are a bit niche and also more expensive. So 53% of that 1% came to the Outdoor Adventure Commission for them to decide what are the priorities. And in the first year, again, that translated into about $22 million. And we here at the state office tried to help guide the Outdoor Venture Commission. And we kind of came up with a process for them to accept interest forms / applications from different recreation stakeholders and entities, local government, federal government. I mean, I think the federal government, Forest Service and BLM and National Park Service, I think they brought to us about $60 million worth of proposals. And so it became apparent to us that there was way more demand than we had supply for the money, that we were going to need a better process. And so at that time, one of the recommendations from the strategic plan was to create regional recreation councils. So we set out to establish 5 regions and also get participation from local elected officials and local land managing agencies and stakeholders in those 5 regions, that they would be the beginning point. If a national forest or a local community or nonprofit wanted to get their hands on some of this adventure fund, they would have to first present to their regional recreation council, and those regional councils would then get together and decide the priorities and then feed those up to the statewide Outdoor Adventure Commission. And we just finished up year 2 of that process, and it resulted in $21 million worth of project allocations. Probably about 8 million of that went into our federal land management partners, and then the rest of it went into a lot of planning efforts. We really have leaned hard into planning. One of the funny things, and if you've been to Utah and if you know about Moab, it's a great place. I love Moab. Obviously, a lot of people do. But one of the things we heard from community stakeholders that were not in Moab, and even some of them that are, was that we don't want to be another Moab, which that would be fine with me. I'd be fine with another Moab, but interestingly enough, local communities don't want that. And we felt like the biggest missing aspect from Moab's development into the outdoor recreation destination that it is now is that holistic, large-scale planning process. So we've really leaned hard into comprehensive planning for outdoor recreation. And about, I want to say 6 million or so of our Outdoor Venture Fund this last year went towards planning efforts, helping communities determine what's the right timing, what's the right location, what's the right fit to help their constituents and their visitors get the best outdoor recreation experience possible with what funding they do have. The rest of that fund, of that 1% carve out, some of it went to our outdoor recreation grant that we have had since the beginning. And then 15% of it went to the State Parks Division for their infrastructure projects. And then the other 10% kind of just has until last year was unappropriated. And then they did find a spot to spend that money. And so it's been super successful. One of the things I'm most proud of is our process. We've been able to really be fairly grassroots about how this money is put on the ground and get local support, and then have a state commission ultimately decide where that funding is able to go. And some of the things I'm most excited about, like this picture here, is a Via Ferrata climbing spot out in northeastern Utah, and really cool experience, unlike any other in Utah. We've got a couple Via Ferratas that are private. You have to pay. This is public access. You can now go and take part in this activity, hopefully with some training and the right equipment. But it's really cool to see things like that. The other one is a couple of, well, in the first year we had 2 really crucial land acquisitions that locals were very concerned that these beautiful, pristine areas that had been private property prior to this acquisition, and they were worried that these would be bought up by private entities and then developed into luxury housing or resorts or things like that, and the local community did not want to see that happen. So we were able to fund a couple of those key acquisitions. This one here is a place called Puffer Lake in south central Utah. Ties into a beautiful lake there and some amazing fishing opportunities, some beautiful trails, and is a real gem now for as far as their opportunity. And it protected it from being developed into something that the local community definitely did not want. It's always a kind of a tough balance, especially here in Utah. We have the vast majority of our land, especially our recreation land, is federal. And so most of our recreation therefore takes place on those federal lands. So this land is now owned by Beaver County, and we created what we call a recreation easement, similar to a conservation easement, and it really effectively is kind of the same thing, but it's more focused on recreation, and it guarantees public access for recreation on this property in perpetuity. So we had this one, we had another one in northern Utah, and we had a few more requests that were met just this last year. So it's really exciting, really cool to see. Then the expansion of our trail crew came in 23, where we hired 5 full-time employees, one person to oversee, and then 4 supervisors to basically do the hiring and regionally operate these trail crews. We've got one here in the Salt Lake area, one right in the middle of the state in Richfield, and then we've got 2 in southern Utah, one in the Moab area, and then one down just north of St. George. And they've been funded through a couple of different sources: our off-highway vehicle account and our outdoor venture fund. And so that we're entering into year 3 now with those crews. Have been really successful. It's been, again, another thing I'm super proud of that we've been able to get support from our legislature on. There's huge backlog, and I emphasize the point that these trails that our crews are working on are mostly on Forest Service and BLM and national parks. Some are within our state parks, but the overwhelming majority of our opportunities in the state of Utah are on those federal lands. And so they go at no cost to the federal agencies. We're often asked, why is so much work being done on federal lands? Why are you spending so much money and so much effort on federal lands? And the answer is because that's where all the recreation's happening, and that's where all the recreators are. So we're not spending it on the land, we're spending it on the recreator. And I think that's been a universally, people nod their heads and go, okay, I get it. And with all the backlog and all of the need out there on trails, with the wear and tear of the user, the wear and tear that Mother Nature puts on the trails, this has made an incredible impact for us. And so that brings us to 2025, where you'll remember in the beginning slide what our GDP output was in outdoor recreation. It was about $4 billion. Now we're more than double that here 13 years later. And lots more jobs, 71,898 outdoor recreation jobs, and then 700 million plus in tax revenue. So again, almost double the amount of tax revenue. So this division and what it costs our government has more than paid for itself. If you factor in the grants and the administrative costs that it takes to run an organization like this and all the different outcomes, that's pretty significant. It's been a very good investment for us. And now like I said, we just finished up our 11th Outdoor Recreation Summit, planning for our 12th. And that Trails Forum conference that I talked about, we decided the last one that we would invite all states from the West. And we called it the Intermountain Trails Conference. And we have participants from Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico join us. And we decided that every other year we'll make it regional, and we can rotate the hosting state. In fact, Wyoming has volunteered to offer the Intermountain Trails Conference next year in May, I believe, in Rock Springs. So we sort of continue to kind of expand our influence and our role as the lead agency in different realms of outdoor recreation, everything from trails to infrastructure to recreation planning and everything in between. And so now we're at the point where we have 43 full-time employees and 28 plus seasonals. When you factor in our trail crews, our wintertime snowmobile trail groomers, and some of our shop employees. When we took on the boating program and the OHV program, we also took on about 60 boats and about 200 or so different off-highway vehicles. And then those are used by the Division of Law Enforcement, the Rangers, which were just consolidated this year into one single entity. DNR has had a history of law enforcement in it throughout its history. Our conservation officers that deal with wildlife, our park rangers who have dealt with park and recreation, and then even some of our forestry, which is where I kind of got my start. So now all of those entities are combined into one division of law enforcement. Same number of officers overall, but focused efforts, and they aid us in our mission, especially in the boating and the OHB program. So we have about, at this point, a little more than $50 million annually in grant funding, and that strategic plan that I talked about. We did a little review earlier this year, and kind of looking back on what have been our successes and what have we been able to do to accomplish what we were directed to in our strategic plan. And we feel like we've made really good progress to make our outdoor economy better, to make the experiences overall for our visitors better, and to just leverage and increase awareness of all the health and social benefits that you get from outdoor recreation, especially as Utah continues to grow. And so next, we have a big list. I mentioned planning, and hopefully everybody knows, but if you don't, when a state Department of Transportation plans, they go long range. They're like 5-10 years out, projecting growth, projecting traffic patterns, and things like that. And we believe that's what's next for Utah in terms of recreation, outdoor recreation, is to look to the model that transportation uses and be able to really project out long-term and help communities in their decision-making processes, so they know what to expect in terms of growth in both demand of outdoor recreation, and what we have to offer as far as the experiences, trends, and things like that. We've just launched into a statewide outdoor recreation trends analysis that will inform some of that long-range planning. We want to be very purposeful so that we don't end up with a lot of organically grown outdoor recreation destinations that don't meet the need and are not a good mold for replicating. We want to grow and continue to grow and have our influence in local engagement, engage more private funding. Just finished a conversation last week with the U.S. Forest Service on how we can, as the state of Utah, partner with the federal government, with the Forest Service, to be able to help them manage their lands, help use some of our advantages when it comes to our state funding, but also our ability to use private funding to improve trails, improve some of their backlog of maintenance, and again, just create a better experience. And then really leaning hard into promoting stewardship. I think Utah does fairly well. We get a lot of international visitors, and we have a long ways to go in terms of just, the do's and the don'ts out there on the landscape. And so we're entering into a new partnership and a new campaign with our Office of Tourism, with our federal partners, with our other state agencies, to a new campaign for stewardship in the outdoors. That's one of the things that we view as a huge responsibility for us. People in Utah love their public lands, and by and large, take care of them pretty well. And we want that to continue. We want that to be passed down to the next generations. And we want to be able to articulate the value of our public lands in a way that is never lost. So safe, responsible, inclusive recreation, and then more engagement from a caucus that we formed a couple of years ago. We formed a caucus in our state legislature because we figured, well, if mining interests and logging interests and cattlemen and everybody else has a caucus, we certainly should have a caucus as well. So we combined with the Office of Tourism and formed a caucus. And so they've met a few times, and we've gotten some good conversations out of it. And I feel like that's a way to continue to sustain what we've been able to do so far. And then, another kind of surprising development that happened in Utah, our Outdoor Business Alliance, which was the Utah Outdoor Association, sort of dried up a couple of years ago and ceased to exist. So we feel like there's a huge value. The OBA can have conversations that the state agencies aren't able to have, and they can have an impact, and they can have that collective voice of the industry and of the real community overall to make change and make sure that outdoor recreation is not negatively impacted. They're our lobby group, and so want to be able to stand up an Outdoor Business Alliance. It's kind of funny that California has one, and that's where you're starting, and Utah doesn't, and that's kind of where we're at right now. But and then the other thing is our guides and outfitters. Utah continues to struggle a little bit from outfitters and guides to really have smooth permitting and good access to our federal partners. And so we have some work to do there. We've got some good examples to look at from across the country, and want to be able to continue to help that group. We've got the annual meeting of America Outdoors here next month in Salt Lake City. So excited for that group to come. And we've got a lot of priorities, but and I'm not going to read through all of these, but overall, we're just here to preserve outdoor experiences for Utahns, increase people's ability to get out and enjoy and get the benefits from recreation, and help teach future generations the value of our public lands, the value of recreation as a therapeutic and as a health measure. So with that, we'll see if there's any questions, and turn it back over to Lexi.
Great. Thanks, Jason. That was awesome. Very thorough presentation to see from an office that's developed to a division. Awesome to see in Utah what the work is going on out there. I saw in your 2 slides ago, I think, you wrote that you're working on connecting, being the connecting point for guides and outfitters. And that brings me to my first question for you. The office originally was in the Governor's Office of Economic Development, but moved to DNR. And I'm wondering if you've seen any lapse in programs that did exist when it was in economic development, if there's anything that is missing, because that is a component of what we look at in economic development on our end.
Yeah, it's changed a little bit. At that time, when the Governor's Office of Economic Development, they had what they called their key pillars, their key economic pillars, and outdoor recreation was one of those key pillars. But I want to say it was probably somewhere around 2020 that it was decided that was not a key pillar. Not unimportant, but we have a lot more potential to increase growth in some of our tech and manufacturing and aerospace and advanced materials. That's where the Governor's Office of Economic Development decided that they could spend their time and get the best results. Utah, it was equated to kind of like if Orange County had an effort and they were spending a lot of time and resources emphasizing theme parks and the need for more theme parks. They don't need it, right? Maybe there would be someone to argue with that, but for us, we already have Utah. We already have proximity to the mountains and the water, and we could probably gain something from continuing to lean into outdoor industry. But businesses recognize and they know, like I mentioned before, they've got reasons for why they move here and why they're able to attract unique talent to Utah. So as Governor Cox put it at the time, the outdoor retailer show, which I didn't even talk about too much of the battle that went on initially between the outdoor retailer show and Salt Lake City and the state of Utah. But they decided to relocate that show over to Colorado. They tried that out and found that it wasn't meeting their needs, and so they moved back to Utah. Still wasn't meeting their needs, and so now they've decided to move to Minnesota, and so to kind of take on a new realm and leave the battleground of Utah and Colorado and go to Switzerland, and so. But as Governor Cox said at the time, we would love to have the outdoor retailer show, but we don't need the outdoor retailer show. And I guess in a way, I kind of agree with that. It was really exciting. I remember being younger and hearing about the OR show and wanting to go and be part of it, and then finally getting a ticket one time and realized I have no place here. I'm not a buyer. Nobody wants to talk to me, but it's just kind of interesting to walk around. So we have our own things going on. Our statute still does include an obligation for us to help outdoor businesses. So we're engaged in that process when outdoor businesses are struggling, when they need help, and that includes outfitters and guides, a lot of startups and a lot of business assistance that we're offering. One of our staff is going to ISPO this year to help some of our outdoor businesses and guide them through that process and expand internationally. So yeah, we still do have that as part of our identity, but in the beginning, it was almost all of our identity.
That makes sense. So if Petzl or Black Diamond have an issue, they do come to you.
Yeah. When the tariffs were being talked about, started to hear from some of those folks, and we did have some really good conversations and maybe even some impacts. I don't know. It's hard to imagine us having an impact on something that of that scale. But the guides and outfitters are the ones I think that really do stand the most to gain from some statewide coordination. I was recently in North Carolina, where we visited the Nantahala National Forest and I forget the name of the other bigger national forest there. But right there on this river, there was this really successful guiding and outfitting company, and the outdoor office director there and the Forest Service all really worked well in concert one with another. So it felt like outfitters and guides, state agency, and Forest Service folks had a really, really good cooperative working relationship here in Utah. I feel like oftentimes our guides and outfitters, at least they represent to me that the Forest Service doesn't take them seriously, or that they are not welcome when it comes to permitting and operating on the landscape. And we feel like there's a huge value in that, not just from a safety perspective, because if you're new to something like climbing or backcountry skiing or canyoneering, it can be really dangerous, but also just that's the point where we get to teach things like leave no trace. And that's where it all begins for people that are looking to be introduced to the outdoors. So we want to support them and make sure that we have that same level, where as in that county in North Carolina, they're the biggest employer in the county. And I don't know that we could say that here in Utah, that we have an outfitting and guiding operation that is of that scale.
Very interesting. I'm curious, what is your relationship like with the ski industry? How does DOR work with? You have a lot of large ski resorts, obviously. It's a big draw in Utah.
Yeah, we do, and we've got a great relationship with all of those resorts, with Ski Utah as an organization here in Utah, and you know, these ski resorts parent companies as well. And it's a relationship that, you know, part of our outdoor economy, significant part of our outdoor economy, is that ski industry. And so we've got everything from private resorts that are all on private land to resorts that are on Forest Service land. And so we kind of, again, we act as that intermediary and that advocate for the private industry to get their needs met. We're able to, as a staff, go out and see ski resorts and take part in a day of skiing, oftentimes with the leadership from everything from Deer Valley and Snowbird to Bryan Head and other. You know, we have I think 15 total ski resorts here in Utah. Nothing compared to Colorado, but yeah, it's a good relationship. It's a close one, and yeah, we have a great organization, Ski Utah, that really is the lead in terms of the ski industry.
Makes sense. I'm going to turn it over to the chat questions. First question is from Keith. He's asking, what has prevented California from creating this office? I can answer that, but I'm going to turn it into a question for you. So Corp ran a bill 3 times. It was vetoed by Governor Brown to create an office of outdoor recreation. The reason was they saw duplicity with state parks in California. And so, Jason, do you see duplicity, and how can this differ, and why should California look at having one to expand our outdoor recreation?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think there's kind of 2 parts to it, but one of them is support. I referenced this Outdoor Adventure Commission, and one of the reasons it was successful is we had at that time Brad Wilson, who was Speaker of the House, as well as the governor. We had pretty broad support overall for creating this division. But I guess the answer to the question, and I understand that's been sort of the hesitation from California, is that there's already is it called the California Division of Parks and Recreation, or what is it?
Department of State Parks and Recreation. So recreation is in the term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's and that's the way it was in Utah. It was the Division of State Parks and Recreation, and so the answer is many of those programs, like I said, with everything from off-highway vehicles to boating and everything in between, recreation takes place in a lot of places outside of a state park. So I think there was some recognition from our legislature as well as our elected officials that there was a need to separate that, and part of that came because folks felt like there was a bit of bias when it comes to things like Land and Water Conservation Fund grants. Almost all of the Land and Water Conservation Fund grants were going to state park projects, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but that meant that other entities weren't getting, I guess, what they would call their fair share. And same thing would go for our off-highway vehicle dollars. A lot of those off-highway vehicle registration dollars, which it costs $35 here in the state of Utah to register an OHV, and we've got 200 something thousand of them. So it's a pretty good chunk of change. And a lot of those dollars were being spent inside of state parks and not being spread out to really where most of the OHV activity was happening. So there was a community coalition that was unhappy about that. And so I think it takes a pretty big coalition. And so if California were to be successful, I'd say that, yeah, broad support from legislative leadership, broad support from community stakeholders, and that's probably, as grassroots as you can get in an effort like this, and to be able to articulate what is to be gained from basically performing government agency surgery and cutting away the things that are truly more statewide in nature and are not necessarily limited to just a state park. Because I think, California, although they're not 65 to 70% federal land like Utah is, there's still quite a bit there, and potentially some case to be made that dollars that are going to the Division of Parks and Recreation are not being utilized more broadly. So that's I think a selling point, as well as just, and I don't know how it is in the Division of Parks and Recreation in California, if there is an entity there or a program that supports outdoor businesses and outdoor industry partners, especially the guides and outfitters. I think California probably dwarfs Utah's economic impact from guides and outfitters, but I think that's probably true. And another key point that I don't know, if I was a guide of a river rafting company or a hiking or expedition company in California, I don't know where I would go in state government. Would I go to Parks and Rec, or where would I go to get help?
It's hard. They come to us a lot with that question, and it depends on the topic, I guess. But yeah,
So that would be a big one, is to have that group lean into the conversation.
Yeah. And we're not trying to take state parks budget. We're looking at other alternatives for finance, of course. But I do hear you on that WCF funds.
Yeah, and I imagine that it was here in Utah, and I wasn't here when the change was made here in the division, but I was here in the Department of Natural Resources, and I remember there being some controversy and some resistance from the Division of State Parks and Recreation for that exact reason. They had a couple of pretty significant funding sources that they were using to support their programs and their parks, but at the end of the day, there was not good public support for what they were doing. So it was a little bit unique for us. I don't know if you could say the same in California, but that was a huge part for us here.
It's important. I'm going to turn to the next question in the chat. We've got Evan Dudley asking, how does Utah position and support urban recreation, and does it invest in education of urban residents to help them be better visitors to rural recreation destinations?
Yeah, we have a goal, a target. It's actually in our legislative targets. 50% of all of our outdoor recreation infrastructure grants have to go to rural communities, and we've been able to get at least near that. I think we've been between 45 and 50% of all of our grants go to rural communities. And then as far as the kind of the second part there, education. Yeah, we do have a couple of avenues there that we're currently doing. We have our Every Kid Outdoors program, which we've bounced around the state to offer programming for different outdoor recreation opportunities. And part of that is leave no trace, stewardship, ethics, things like that. And then our messaging overall. I mentioned our partnership with Office of Tourism and other state agencies, local stakeholders to provide, because we're all making efforts. We've got a state outdoor recreation effort where we're talking about responsible recreation and stewardship, and then the local BLM office has got their campaign, and the Forest Service is saying something. We're all sort of saying basically the same thing, but there's value in consistency in the message. So that's what we're driving for too, is consistency in the message. And in rural Utah, things are somewhat different, but there's still that passion, that love. People love their public lands. And the reason they love is they view them as that they are part owners. I guess there's probably some progress to be made in terms of the treating it or leaving it better than you found it, and that's kind of what we're aiming for. So some progress to be made there, but that's kind of what we're doing up to this point.
What about urban recreation access? Like I'm imagining most of that would be centered around Salt Lake City.
Yeah, the Wasatch Front here is pretty diverse in terms of what is available. Salt Lake County, for example, we're it's our biggest county, it's our capital city. There are not very many camping opportunities that are close here. There are not very many off-highway vehicle opportunities. You have to travel outside of the county to get either one of those experiences. Our Cottonwood Canyons, Mill Creek Canyon, some of our canyons and our foothills are amazing when it comes to the non-motorized experience, and we've got wilderness within a 1 mile hike of trailheads here in the Salt Lake Valley. So we want to create more opportunities, especially in neighborhoods like where our office is located here. It's a neighborhood called Rose Park. Lots and lots of immigrants, lots and lots of lower income, and so one area that is underused and neglected, that runs right through all of our most diverse neighborhoods and our neighborhoods who do face the most barriers, is the Jordan River. It's a beautiful river corridor that runs right through the Salt Lake Valley, and there's a lot of safety concern. The perceived safety on the Jordan River Parkway is low. People don't feel safe there. So that's one effort that we're really putting emphasis on, is how do we create a safe and accessible place for people to get introduced to the outdoors in our urban communities, including Salt Lake City, Ogden, other urban centers that we know for sure that there are people who are our future in terms of outdoor recreation and public lands that they just haven't been able to get the access yet and discover that's who they are, that they are an outdoor recreation zealot, that we want to join the movement, join the community. So to be able to create safer, more inviting, and more secure and clean, manicured places that are exceptional here in our urban areas is something we're trying hard to focus on. It's not easy, but we're making some progress. We've got some exciting things happening here in the Salt Lake Valley when it comes to developing this area. That other 10% that I mentioned that wasn't allocated is designated for that exact purpose.
That's great to hear. I see a question in the chat. Can you talk more about the relationship you currently have with state parks, and do you compete for LWCF and RTP funds?
Yeah, so they're right across the hall from us here, and we meet with them regularly. In fact, as soon as I finish with this, I'll be getting in a car for 3 hours with our state parks director, Scott Strong. And it's taken a little bit of time to kind of find normal for how our two divisions work together. We don't compete necessarily. Our agency doesn't manage lands, so that's the good part. We are sister agencies in DNR, and we cooperate, and we sort of have a little bit of favoritism for our state parks partners. We still maintain that and want to help them and recognize that that's really where our a fairly big obligation is for us, and that is everything from LWCF and RTP to even our state grants, which they are eligible for, and we do still invest a lot into our state parks for sure. The state parks director is a member of the Outdoor Adventure Commission, and a voting member, and as such gets the opportunity to advocate for and inform people, the rest of the commission, in the value of state parks and where those investments could be made.
That's great. Thanks, Chelsea Taylor, for that question. Jason, I have one last question for you. You mentioned that you have 7 rangers that work under the OREC. Where are they based, and what do they do?
Yeah, and to clarify, we lost them a few months ago when they went to the Division of Law Enforcement. So
oh no, okay.
Yeah, but we had them because what we did at the time when the state parks and recreation, they had rangers too, and they were primarily operating within state parks and the surrounding areas. But there were some areas that were gaps. For example, Lake Powell in farther southern Utah, Arizona border, and Flaming Gorge on the Utah-Wyoming border. Some of those larger water bodies and some of those larger destination areas that aren't necessarily near a state park. That's where we focused our efforts for those recreation rangers, so that we sort of filled the gaps between where our federal partners are doing public safety patrolling and where our state parks folks are doing public safety patrolling. So we kind of tried to fill the gaps, and we're still doing that. It's just being done a little bit differently now with that larger, more consolidated agency.
Got it. Yeah. Well, Jason, you have a beautiful state. I in my oh no, my connection's unstable. Sorry, I
Yeah,
think I lost you for a second.
yeah.
Yeah.
It sounded like you had some great things to say at the start, but they didn't come through.
Okay. Yeah. So I was going to say, yeah, I've been out, I've climbed in Indian Creek, been out to Moab, I've hiked in the Ogden, Huntsville area, been out to Park City, big little Cottonwood Canyons, skied there. And I've even mountain biked at Snow Basin, even though I'm not a mountain biker. I wouldn't call myself that. So you have some beautiful public lands that do allure Californians out there. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing to expand access and really fine tune the infrastructure that you have going on out there, because it is quite a vast landscape and you have the big 5 national parks out there. So it's quite a lot of work to be doing at a state office, even though a lot of your land is federal. So I really appreciate that. At Corp, we believe that the biggest gift you can give us is your time. So thank you so much, Jason, for giving us your time today. And do you have any parting words for everyone?
No, my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity, and yeah, wish you guys the best of luck in your endeavors. I hope very soon to hear some good news. And if you have follow-up questions or you need any additional insights into what I've talked about as far as our history and how we've come to where we are now, I'm happy to do that. But yeah, love California as well, and it seems a little too far away sometimes, but yeah, we're I feel like a lot of times we have a kinship with California when it comes to our outdoor recreation opportunities.
Definitely. And you're getting a lot of love in the chat. Everyone's saying thank you. Thanks, Jason. Great to hear about Utah's success in this area. Very informative, impressive work over there in Utah. So thank you, Jason. All right.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day, everyone.